ready for our Heritage Studies lesson. And we've only got 2 lessons left in this chapter. We've got this lesson and one more lesson, and then we're done. And then we have to move on to the chapter review and the test at the end of the week. So, yeah, so here we are. Okay, so this is one of the last pages that we worked on, that we looked at last week in one of our lessons that we did last week. So right now we're going to be on lesson 93, and this is going to be in your reader book on page 280. So if you'll turn to page 280. Okay. If you're not there, pause it until you get there. All right. Now, let's go back. Let's kind of review a little bit. Now, I don't have very much on the screen for Heritage Studies. I have a little bit for the work text pages we're going to work on. So what does it mean when an item is rationed? Remember we talked about things being rationed? Let's see if we can go back. There's a fly in here, and I'm fixing to be doing some karate. So if you see me doing some karate, it's because I'm after a fly. I don't like flies. Okay, remember rationing? Remember we talked about that? Remember when it's rationing, that means people can only buy a certain amount. You know? Yeah, that's what rationing is. There's that fly. So who filled the jobs that were left behind by some of the men that went to war? Women did, and some men did. Some men who didn't believe in fighting stayed back. What term describes people who shared information with the enemy? What are they called? Spies. You say, I spy. Spies do that. Now this one's a little bit harder. Who wanted to do damage to hurt war production? Do you remember what those were called? Let's see if we can go back and find this. No, we can't. It's not going to let us go past that page. Saboteurs. Remember saboteurs? We learned about saboteurs. It was spies and saboteurs. Saboteurs wanted to sabotage our war effort, and spies wanted to tell the enemy about what we were doing. That's what it was. So let's look at page 280. 280 is a very important lesson, or page. This lesson is very important. It talks about D-Day and beyond. Now, I'm going to read, and I want you to follow along, okay? And then we're going to work on some more text pages. While American civilians tried to support their country and soldiers, the military made plans to end the war. There were 2 enemies, and the military had come up with 2 very different strategies. Now, with Germany and D-Day, Germany sat surrounded by countries that it had conquered. In the east, the USSR slowly pushed Nazi armies westward. The other Allied troops were focused on Italy, but between Italy and Germany were the Alps. In late 1943, President Roosevelt made General Dwight D. Eisenhower the supreme Allied commander in Europe. Eisenhower and his aides developed a strategy. All the Allies, except the USSR, would land troops in a part of France called Normandy. They would first trick the Germans into thinking they were landing somewhere else. The code name for the landing day was D-Day. Look at page 281 underneath that map. Finally, on June 6, 1944, the Allied liberation of France began. 160,000 Allied troops landed on the Normandy beaches. You ever heard of them saying storming Normandy? That was a very deadly day. The battle to free Europe was hard. Many men died. But under Eisenhower's leadership, the Allies started to push the Germans back to Germany. Aha! Now, the end of Nazi Germany. It took almost a year to free Europe. Finally, the Allies reached Germany. But before Russian troops reached the heart of Berlin, Adolf Hitler killed himself. On May 8, 1945, German leaders surrendered and the war in Europe was over. Look at page 282. Now that was over in Europe. Let's talk about what was going on over in Asia. Defeating Japan took a little longer. The Allied plan was to island hop across the Pacific Ocean. After many battles, American forces captured the northern Mariana Islands and Iwo Jima. The Americans could now easily bomb Tokyo and other important cities in Japan. The United States began regularly dropping bombs on Japan. Factories and ports were hit many times. Tokyo was firebombed, but the Japanese refused to surrender. The Japanese culture did not allow surrender. Most soldiers chose to die in battle or kill themselves rather than face the dishonor of surrender. The Japanese thought that Emperor Hirohito was a god, and they wanted him to be victorious. Most Japanese wanted to fight until they won or until they died. That map on the bottom of page 282 is going to be very important for some of your lesson today. Look at page 283. The United States didn't want to fight that battle. American soldiers could attack and conquer the Japanese main island, but too many Americans would die. The American military feared that Japanese civilians might die as well. Then they and more Americans would die. The United States then had to choose another plan. So do you see where it says the bomb on page 283? The United States had begun working on a new type of bomb. It did not use normal explosives. Instead, it split atoms. The power of an atom bomb was far greater than any other weapon in existence. Soon after Germany's defeat, President Roosevelt died. Harry Truman became president. President Truman decided to use the atom bomb on Japan. He believed it would be better for American and Japanese citizens. Fewer American soldiers would die. Also, fewer Japanese citizens would die in an invasion than in an invasion. The United States and the other allies asked Japan one last time to surrender. Japan refused. On August the 6th, 1945, an American plane dropped the first atom bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Tens of thousands of people died. The Japanese government still would not surrender. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Very soon after that bombing, Japan agreed to give up as long as they could keep their emperor. Japan's final surrender was signed on September 2nd, 1945. The war then was completely over. Lots of people died during that time. It was a very tragic time. Very tragic time. Okay, so let's look at our work text pages. There are 3 pages today, but we're only going to do 2. We're going to skip page 126, I think. Okay, so let's look at page 125. Now, I have that on the screen. I know you can't see all of that it says that there's just 125. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to, on the first 4, you should be on page 125. Okay, the first 4 at the top gives a date or a time period. What we need to do is we need to write in the blank what happened during that time period. So I'm going to put one up on the screen. You write it down, and then, but make sure you pause it because I'm going to go fast, okay? All right, so in late 1943, President Roosevelt made General Eisenhower the supreme Allied commander in Europe. That's what happened on number 1. So you need to write this down on number 1. Go ahead and pause that. All right, number 2, June 6, 1944, the Allied liberation of France began. This is better known as D-Day. Number 3, May the 8th, 1945, German leaders surrendered. And number 4, August the 6th, 1945, an American plane dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. Number 5 and 6, 7, and 8 are asking questions. So I'd like to see if you could get these right before I put the answers up there, but you're going to have to copy the answers down, okay? So why did it take a year for the Allies to free Europe? Why did it take so long? Do you remember why? Because Germany sat surrounded by countries that it had conquered. So basically, they had to get through all of those countries to get to Germany. And so it took a while. So you'll need to write this answer down on number 5. Okay, the question on number 6. What plan did the Allies use so that they could easily bomb Tokyo and other important cities? You remember? Island hopping. Remember going from island to island to island, not staying long, just kind of hopping from island to island. That's the plan they're going to use so that they could get close to Tokyo. Number 7. You may not have written that down. Make sure you write that down. Number 7, why wouldn't the Japanese surrender when the United States regularly dropped bombs on their cities and ports and firebombed Tokyo? Remember, the Japanese soldiers didn't believe in surrender. They chose to die in battle or kill themselves. So you write this down. You don't have to copy it just like that. You can just kind of write one or two. I mean, you can write this sentence or this sentence because they both mean the same thing. Go ahead and pause it as you write some of those answers down. All right, and number 8, what made the power of an atom bomb far greater than any other weapon in existence? Do you remember? It didn't use normal explosives. It split atoms. So it made it way more tough. Make sure you write those down. Okay. So what you're going to do, your assignment is going to be page 127. Now, there's a fly, and I am about ready to get him. At the top on page 127, 1 through 6, it tells you what to do. Draw a box, draw a circle, draw a rectangle, blah, blah, blah. Okay? The answers are going to be on the map on page 282 in your book. Okay? You might have to read a little bit above there, but that's what you're going to do on that. And I'm going to grade this page. I think it's worth like 8 or 6 points, I think, or something like that. So anyway, so you'll just... I think that's right. Yeah, you do this page yourself, page 127. I think that's right. Yeah. Anyway, you should do fine on it, but like I said, you may have to read a little bit up there. So anyway, that's what you'll do. If you need any help, let me know. Okay? All right, that'll be all your lesson for today.